Okay, so if you're watching this video, it's because you've already collected your data for the second part of the lab. So for the mass versus velocity, you have your data recorded. So that table should be filled out for you. Okay, you'll see in the Google Sheet that's posted in Classroom that it's actually coded for you. So if you enter in the masses that you used into that first column under data table 1, you could simply copy and paste them from the actual table, Command C and Command V, paste them into that column. I'm going to do that with my own data, so I'm going to Command V, paste it in there. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my data table and Control C, copy my times. Okay, Command V, paste my times in. And you will see when I paste those times in that the speed will calculate itself. Okay, and it will also copy itself over to the table in which you're going to use to identify the relationship between the variables. To understand the relationship between the variables, we need to graph the independent variable versus the dependent variable. Okay, we said that again, the independent variable is a variable that you manipulate. The mass is the variable that we're manipulating. So mass will be our independent variable. Speed is the dependent variable. It's a variable that will change as a response to the change in mass. So all the other variables over here are not essential. We want to figure out how mass affects speed. So we're going to graph speed versus mass. So you can think of it, right, a velocity versus time graph. We know velocity is always on the y-axis. Another way to think about it, there's a saying, okay, it's called dry mix. The depending or dependent variable or the responding variable goes on the y-axis. The manipulated variable or the independent variable goes on the x-axis. So mass should go on the x, speed should go on the y. To create a graph, right, we highlight our entire data set that we would like to graph. We head to the toolbar, we go to Insert Chart. In physics, we always want a scatter plot. So I inserted my chart. We can see here that I have a title, speed versus mass in kilograms. The speed is on the y-axis and the mass is on the x-axis. Okay, which is exactly what we want, right? Mix, independent on the x. Things that we need to add to our graph here. We need a trend line and an equation of the line to give us an idea of how these variables are related. So to do that, in the menu, we're going to click on Customize, as long as we have scatter, the correct variables on the x and the y. We click Customize. To add a trend line, you're going to go to Series. You're going to click Trend Line. Technically here, a linear trend line does not fit our data the best. Okay, technically our polynomial trend line will fit the data the best. But to get an idea about the relationship between how mass and speed is related, it's a little bit easier if you look at the equation of a line. So we're actually going to click linear even though it does not fit our data set the best. In order to display the equation, right, underneath where we click trend line, you see type, color, capacity, then we see label. Under label, we want to change none to use equation. We also want that equation to not shrink our graph. So to fix that, we're going to minimize series. head to legend. It's the position of legend is clicked automatic. We want to change automatic to inside. You can see that our graph gets a little bit bigger. It would also be nice if you had a few extra grid lines. So we're going to go to minor grid count and add 1 minor grid count on the y axis. And let's do 2 minor grid lines on the x-axis. That way we can see our data a little bit better. So you see here we have a negative slope. Our y-intercept is not 0. That should give us some indication about how speed and mass are related. You're going to Command C, so copy it, head back to your lab, and you're going to Command V, paste it exactly where it says graph 2, speed versus spring, wrong section. Graph 1, speed versus mass. We're going to paste it. You can paste unlinked, and we have our graph. You're going to comment on the relationship between speed and mass based on this graph here. And you're going to do that underneath procedure point 9. Okay, so you'll have your data table and your graph. In the lab sheet, you'll come up with one sentence describing how the mass and the velocity are related.